Call the school committee meeting to order. It's Wednesday, June 6, 2018. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll just do a quick run through of the agenda. This evening, first we will approve our minutes from our regular session on May 23rd. Then we will hear from our superintendent, our assistant superintendent, and our director of finance and administration. Then we'll recognize our retirees. Then we have recognition of an Eagle Scout, but I believe our Eagle Scout is not here.
Carter got a new job, so
good.
He can be away. So he's being well behaved as an Eagle, and he's going to stay at work. So
and we did mention him last time when we had the Gold Scout Awards here too. Then we will hear from our school committee members, any citizens requests after that. Then we'll hear about capital request memo of the 5-year capital plan. Then we'll vote to accept the Rangers on Track donations. Then we'll hear from our bus company for student a report. And then we will go over our student handbooks and approve those. Then we will evaluate our superintendent, her annual evaluation. And then I believe we do have a need for a quick executive session this evening. So I think I will, I need a motion to approve the minutes from May 23rd regular session.
I make a motion to approve the amended minutes.
Amended.
On May 23rd.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Great.
I abstain since I wasn't here.
Oh,
Yeah, you
Steve
were
wasn't
here.
here, correct.
Okay. You can read the amended minutes.
I did read them.
Thank you.
I will comment on those in a little while.
Okay. And I will hear from our superintendent.
So it's great to see you all in your Ranger gear. I feel badly that on Ranger Nation Day I am not in Ranger gear, but I was a major Ranger all week. So I was in the field. This was marathon week of amazing events that led up to our high school graduation. And whenever we graduate a class of seniors, it really represents the path of all of their journey from their start with us, wherever they joined us, and if it's kindergarten and we have preschool and we had them all the way through the years. It's such a tribute to all of the educators who played a role in bringing them to the celebration of a really important day. We had awards ceremony last week, and then we had baccalaureate, which was amazing. There was a concert a night last week, I think, and this week as well. And then on Saturday, the weather was in our favor, and we hosted a really lovely graduation. I have to say that they were one of the most attentive graduating groups I've had. They were very engaged, and they were really great listeners, which is nice when you're giving a speech if someone's actually nodding like they're listening. They didn't pitch around the beach balls until after we were done talking. It was just a really, really lovely day. And I want to just commend the parents and all the students on what was a really nice day. The last piece of that was that many of them had to project graduation that night. And I think we just want to put out a formal recognition as superintendent of schools and as a member of this community that as a host community that has a really well-established project graduation evening where all of our students can go for free, attend a drug and alcohol-free night of safe play, fun, enjoyment, and a final night together as a class. It is a wonderful event, and they hosted an open house last week to really do a little more publicizing for themselves. They're kind of a quiet group, but people need to know that this is an anchor of the senior year and an important part of ensuring that their last kind of stage of the last night, we really own a lot of the identity of their evening, that we know they're safe and enjoying time together. And so I just want to give a shout out to that team, all of the parents who work on that for the fundraising, the decorating, the woman who does a bunch of the decorating's kids graduated, 15 years ago. It's just a really vibrant group of really passionate people who care about providing safe and healthy options for our youth in the community. So for me, that was just an amazing part of the night. And that is my report. I'll talk a little bit about the milestone ceremony when I honor our retirees.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Daniel?
Good evening. The only thing I want to report on is it's related to as we're closing up this year and you know before the beginning of next year. This is sort of my last opportunity to tell you one of the things that the administration has been talking about with the teachers for next year that we want on the docket is we're creating a committee looking at our social emotional learning programs in the district next year. And by that, just to unpack it for a second and how we got there is, you know, there's been a lot over the last few years of discussion about the mental health of our kids and increasing degrees of anxiety and complexity of cases. And so the issues keep cropping up at different age groups, early elementary and, you know, all the way up through high school. And the conversation it's nationwide, but it's obviously here in Westborough, we want to do what's best by our kids. And while there's lots of fantastic things that are already happening, they're concentric circles, and we want to pull everybody together and have a committee that works on it next year. So it's just I just wanted you to know it's a priority item that we're putting forward. We sent a leadership team a week ago to a conference that was a state level conference. And so we had a number of people from our district there with other districts thinking about, you know, how to roll something like this out. So I'll keep you more informed about it, but I just wanted you to know about it in case you know you've got questions between now and the beginning of the year. I can give you more details of what we're thinking.
Great, thank you. Thanks. Irene has nothing this evening? Okay. I think we are going to recognize our retirees now.
Back over here. So Daniel and I and our leadership team had the opportunity, and several of you were able to attend as well. And 4 years ago, when I joined the Westborough community, one of the things that was important to me was to establish an opportunity to celebrate important milestones of our profession. And all of the faculty, staff, and colleagues who make up the fabric of the Westborough Public Schools contribute day in and day out to incredibly vibrant but stressful and complex work that it takes to bring your A game here every day and to do this work. And the energy is just something you don't understand what it takes unless you're in the club and you do the work and you understand. I used to say to my kids that they'd come home from like going on an event where they were walking around all day and they'd be like, I'm so tired. Why am I so tired? I was relaxing on them because you were on your feet. You were talking, you were moving, you were teaching. That's just the baseline, which is, this is a very active profession. You from the time you wake up and your brain clicks on to plan for your day and what you're doing to teach, to contribute, to run an office, to meet kids' needs as a nurse, you're working hard. And it's exhausting physically and amazingly stimulating emotionally. And so it's just a really complex and amazing career. And so to celebrate it at important milestones is something that's very, very important to me. And this year we had a series of retirees, and yesterday we celebrated them, and it was a really enjoyable ceremony. And families and friends come, and it's just a wonderful opportunity to recognize people we know that we see all the time. And so I want to share with you tonight, I believe we had 13 retirees, and we have several of them tonight who are here, and I want to take a moment and recognize each of them and just call out some of the good news of who they are. And so Eve Oliver, I'm going to have her stand so we can recognize her. Eve is the head of the cafeteria staff at the Gibbons School and has provided amazing, loving daily care of students and feeding them and welcoming them. And staff and students alike find her vibrant and chipper nature just such an important part of their day. I know I do. And so whenever I visit Gibbons, I make sure that I come in and I get a moment to see her, I have her in my cell phone. That tells you I love Eve. That we can connect, because she cares about all of the dimensions of Gibbons and really helped me when I was trying to understand the complexity of what it takes to run a really strong, dynamic food service program. She was a person who really helped me to look for blind spots and see how to provide some framework of leadership to her team. And she helped us do the work better. And I just want to honor her tonight and congratulate her on her retirement. So welcome.
Thank you.
So next, let's see, I'm just making this up as I go. I'm looking out at you and thinking spontaneously, Linda Rieger. So I want to recognize Linda Rieger, who as well can stand and be honored as one of the kindergarten para-educators in this district for so many years, providing love, affection, that mother touch, while the teacher can get that little pressure point of discipline and the balance of a day. The good cop, bad cop love of being a kindergarten para is just such an important part of the mission of the job. Knowing them all, where their day is, shepherding them through, keeping a watchful eye on them while we let them feel they're independent. So our little 5-year-olds feel that they're on their own many times, and that's an important part of their experience, but they're never alone. You have people like Linda and Elizabeth that we'll talk about in a minute, watching over them and making sure that they're safe and that they're growing. And I think the other thing about Linda is that she's just a plugged-in member of this community. She is active in a range of community service work, and of course she grows flowers for all of us, but also just brings that love and vibrancy to Armstrong. She's one of those key players that gets the day off to a good start there, and you need those people, and Linda's been that for so long that they're gonna really, really have a hole there to fill. So congratulations on your retirement. So I also want to recognize Elizabeth, because Elizabeth Rotundi also was one of our kindergarten paras over at Hastings, and so also 23 years of experience providing that loving care of knowing a building frontwards and backwards, the people you have to kind of shepherd and pull from their talents and fill in the spot. And I think yesterday Lee spoke so beautifully about the energy that Elizabeth has brought to this work, to learn completely at all times and to be one of those engaged continual learning professionals, where she was always thinking, what else can I contribute, what else can I add, and in that being a consummate learner, to keep thinking about what vibrant piece you could bring to the service of our students. And I just feel very fortunate that our kids have been so well cared for from you. Thank you so much, and happy retirement. So Lois McGregor. So Lois, I have to tell, I didn't tell you yesterday that I had to go to a reading teacher. So whenever I'm talking about literacy support, it's near and dear to my heart, because as a non-reader when I was little, and someone who really didn't have the easy flow of literacy that came to my other two siblings above me, I had to fill out all those phonics books with a private tutor. And then I just finally had to get to that little reading specialist who could help me feel that love of reading and unlock the code and help me find my way and become an impassioned book club member. And it's that service up close for students who need that extra support, and it is a huge, huge part of what makes us successful in Westborough, that we have that SWAT team that can come in and collaborate with teachers and think about what's next and best and needed for students to thrive. And Lois, I can't thank you enough for doing that for our students. And congratulations. All right, I'm going down the line. I think Betsy, did I save you for last? Dun, 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 dun. So Betsy Krensman is our retiring secretary from Hastings. And Betsy has been a long-standing professional here in Westborough for over 29 years. And I think about stamina not just for the work, but for caring about it. And that's the difference. And I think Betsy is another person who shepherded me through giving me feedback and helping me learn how to do the work better, to understand the dynamic of the pressures that our secretarial team was under in the district and what they needed to do to thrive, and how we needed to do a better job to put them together to have collaborative opportunities to learn from each other. She taught me that they needed time to get schooled for Power School, and then they needed to cross-train. And she gave me a sense about the importance of increasing our skill set for welcoming all of our ELL students, and just the complexities of the pressures that put on an office as we've grown as a district. And so for me, I think Betsy's the person who makes me kind of get it, that whole piece around what it takes to run an office. And they are busy. And so I know we'll be calling her and I'll be seeing her, so I'm not saying goodbye. So I think I just want to congratulate you on being such a good support. So this is work that we care so much about. I feel so fortunate to work for these people, to come to work every day and think about what we can do to surprise, to support, to respond, the things that we need to provide. And I just want to tell you, this is part of a really incredible group that we honored yesterday. So I want to thank you all. I also want to tell you, you don't have to stay. So one of the things we do is we put you first so you can leave. You should go out and have a drink. You should go have dinner. That's what we should add to this, is like after this, you should all go to dinner. So I hope that you're heading off to a celebration or an outing. If you go to the Civic Club, 15% of any purchases tonight goes to Rangers on Track. So you could keep contributing. I think you should go
contributing.
Keep contributing. So again, thank you, all of you.
Did anyone want to comment from the school committee? Sorry, before you run out. I don't know if any of the school committee want to comment. Steve?
Before you all leave, I guess the point here is simply that we thank you very much for your services for all these years, and we'll miss you, because one of the reasons why the school system is as good as it is because of all you and your contributions. It's bittersweet, I'm sure, because you wouldn't be here for all these years if you didn't like your job. And I think all of us who like our job really realize that when we retire, we will miss it. Even the bad news we'll still miss. So again, we thank you so much for your service, and we'll work to replace you, we hope, with people who are equally qualified to do the job. And thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Good night. Enjoy.
Thank you.
They look happy.
They are happy. Wait till you see them later. They look so rested. I saw a retiree
They look
from last year
energized and
today.
happy.
I'm like, you look so rested.
They look energized.
Really enjoyable.
Should bottle that. All right, so our Eagle Scout is not here.
I do want to say that Carter Fleming did an incredibly good job on his Eagle project as well, and has graduated this weekend and is able to, I'm going to say he did a bunch of invasive plant species work over at Gilmore Pond, and also removed a whole bunch of other invasive species along paths over in that area. So we commend Carter for his work.
Great, thank you. Okay, now we have school committee member reports. Kristen, do you have anything?
Yes, I just wanted to say that we understand that this time of year is filled with field trips and special events and concerts and projects and plays and performances and end of the year celebrations. And I would just like to give a special shout out to all the families for all their donations and attendance and participation, and for juggling it all, because we know it's hard to ask you to come back to school many different times of the morning and evening, and we appreciate everything families are doing to support our students and our teachers as the year comes to a close. And the other thing I just wanted to say, that Skyrise Theater is putting on a play this weekend.
That's right.
You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown. Dave's kids are in the play, and performances are Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and there are choices of 6 o'clock and 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and it's all at the high school, so lots of Westborough students are participating in that. And my daughter and I already have our tickets for Saturday at 6, because we know lots of actors and actresses in the play, so we're looking forward to that. That's it. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Lisa.
I wanted to mention last week there was an evening at Mill Pond called Math Night, and I think the reason this is so imperative is that for so many years, as the mathematics curriculum has changed, so many parents look over the curriculum and say, this is not how I learned math. What are they doing? And so this Math Night really introduced to parents
the purpose behind the new type of processes that are happening in our math curriculum today, and it gave parents an insight to the greater significance of process of math versus computation, especially as computation becomes minimized with handheld devices in our hand, to be able to calculate something or compute something so quickly by computer without knowing why or having good number sense, math becomes somewhat irrelevant. So it was an incredible evening to really give parents that glimpse. 5th grade teachers came out on their own time to share with the evening. And I think that we're finding that more and more as the curriculum changes. And this was Jenny Dean's night. She's our curriculum coordinator for mathematics. But across the board, as we see curriculum change, whether it be world languages or the engineering, we're seeing that we're really changing with the times and the techniques that it's really about best practice. And that's what usually comes to Westborough. So that was great.
Thank you. Dave?
I'm going to steal a little of yours, but I'll let you do the rest of it. If you haven't noticed, the turf is gone. It's
yeah, you can
a
take
beautiful site.
That's Steve's too. I took a tour.
Yeah, and it is so
We'll all have
exciting.
something to say about it.
Yeah, I want to reiterate my thanks to the community because this is a huge milestone. This is something that is truly needed. It is a community-used facility. It benefits all of us, and I look forward to a wonderful, wonderful new field, new stadium, and wonderful events, as we talked about last week, that are going to be coming forward.
Thank you.
Steve?
Yeah, I have a few things, I guess, to talk about. And the current status of the various projects that we're doing relative to school committee being the various schools and construction, of which we just had a little brief discussion on the athletic fields. But I'll run through the litany as I understand it. The Hastings pre-K school building is on schedule and on budget. If you've had a chance to look at it in detail, you'll see that most of the internal petitions are already framed. A significant amount of HVAC, electrical, piping, etc. is already done and run in the building. The roof is on, so it's weather tight relative to the roof. At least one side, and I think the back as well towards the school building. Brickwork is nearly complete, and it started on the other two faces. Pretty soon we'll be seeing windows. I think they were coming
This week.
this week. And so that project is really going well, and I think all of us who are participating with the players, being the contractor, the engineer, and the architect, as well as the OPM, the owner's project manager, are very thankful that we've had the opportunity to work with these people who understand what our need is. And so, as I said before, it's on schedule, and we anticipate the building will come in and be useful beginning of school this year. The building project that nobody sees because of where it is Armstrong, with the replacement of the temporary classrooms in the back is very hard to see unless you're one of the kids playing in the playground. I had a chance to get over there today, and it's amazing how well they've done with such a tight site, with the playground being right next door, and the kids are playing as they're excited best, I guess, as they not only do their thing, but they also watch construction. That building is, the foundation is done, the backfill is in, the foundation insulation is in, the structural steel is complete, the structural deck is done, the wood blocking for the roofing is done, the roof will go on probably next week. The base slab inside the building will be poured this week, and they are ahead of schedule and on budget as well. And they've had a few glitches here and there, partly because we forced the architect to do this work so quickly to be able to meet the schedule of complete and substantially complete. I guess I'll say that, but given the benefit of the doubt that it'll probably be farther than that by start of school this year. It's the same contractor who is doing the work at Hastings. And again, the working relationship between the contractor, the OPM, and the architect, it really shows when things work well. Gibbons, interestingly enough, most of the work had been done at Gibbons, and we had substantial completion last August. And in fact, we'll have a walkthrough shortly for that project, to visit all the things that are right and whatever warranty items still exist, and there aren't many. But we had to kick off today for the final piece of that construction, which is the replacement of the canopy in the front of the building. The canopy issue was that the columns that support it have seen their better days. There's a fair amount of rust on the bottom of those columns, so that the thickness of the columns is not what it used to be. So the committee, with the understanding of the Board of Selectmen, elected to replace the canopy and its structural supports. So the kickoff meeting for that happened today. And again, our requirements of the contractor is to get that work done this summer so that the new canopy and its supports are done by start of school. And, you know, in discussion with the contractor and the understanding of what's needed and how they're going to do it, they are very hopeful that they will have it done by the beginning of school. And if they don't, whatever's left will be done on weekends or during vacations. So again, this is a new contractor we haven't dealt with before, but they seem to know their business, and of course we're hopeful with the support of the various players that we have that work for the town, we'll make sure that it does come out that way. As has been mentioned, the athletic field, and I think you can pretty much see, as David mentioned, you know, how fast they've moved. They began the end of May in certain organizational pieces, but they really got to it after graduation because we wouldn't let them on the field until then. The upper field has been stripped. The materials mostly are trucked out. Most of it has gone to the town in one of two places, which is the good stuff went to the new cemetery on Nurse Street. And the more bony stuff went to the DPW for use by the town for other purposes. What's most important to me, and one of the things that has been, I think, an issue with those who had any involvement with the high school when the upper field was originally constructed, was the stability of the upper slope. In visiting the site today, what I can say is that that issue is now resolved. That upper slope is like concrete. By having drained the issue that was a problem when we built that in 1999 has been resolved based on the draining that was put underneath the slope at the time. They've already done the excavation as far deep into the hillside as they need to be. It's ready to start the base fill for the structural support wall that'll go there, that'll form that edge of the field. As a matter of fact, the precast concrete blocks for that retaining wall arrived on the site today, and they will start to erect it either by the end of this week or beginning of next. So I think one thing that shows is the level of cooperation that we have had, not only with all the players that we've hired to do it, but within the organization of the school district and all the people that work for us, both in the school buildings as well as on the committee and otherwise.
Yeah, and I agree that the collaborative groups, the town engineer, the building inspector, all of those groups have really moved quickly with us and really in a supportive way.
Mm-hmm. So again, it's fun to see all this stuff move. It's also, I guess, interesting that we've been able to hold our own in regards to negotiations, contracts, and all of that stuff, which of course is important, but when you finally see these projects moving forward, it really is wonderful. So the last 2 points that I wanted to make is, as you know, we've been selected by the MSBA, the Massachusetts School Building Authority, to begin the study and design of what would be needed for a new Fales, either a new renovated Fales or a new building, which becomes Fales. The kickoff meeting for that work is June 13th. And we'll be moving ahead with the design and studies this summer with, we hope, occupancy probably in the fall of 2019, depending upon how it all works out in terms of which one we're going to do, whether it's a renovation or whether it's a new building altogether. There are problems if it's a renovation, which simply is where do we put the kids while we're doing it?
But on the other hand, the MSBA is not going to allow us to spend any more money than they think we should. The final piece of my story is, let's call it Hastings 2, which is the renovation, potential renovation of the rest of the Fales building. And at this stage, it would be new windows, a new roof, a new heating system, which, of course, if you remember, we voted money to do that a few years ago. And what we've been waiting for is whether or not the MSBA would participate as a funding agent for those functions for Hastings. We will find out very soon whether or not we're on the list for funding. And if we do, we hope that we would also get at least the 43% that we've received from the state for the other projects that they've supported. And on that basis, we keep our fingers crossed, because that will make the money that was voted by the town for the heating system go that much farther, basically twice as far. And that's the reason why we haven't spent that money yet, nor started that repair. But we are pretty close, I guess, to finding out whether or not we have to do something with the heating system. And we're very hopeful that we're on the list by MSBA for that work. So that's pretty much a summary of the projects. I have a comment, however, having not been at the last meeting, which is not usual for me, but because of it, I was able to watch Westborough TV and pick up most of what was done at the meeting. I think what I'll say first is that we, when we're here and we're speaking to you, that we speak into the microphone so you can hear us. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the only bad microphone is the one on the podium, in my opinion, based on who was speaking from there last week. There are other groups, I guess, that are televised where you can't understand them at all. Either they're not loud enough or they don't speak close enough to the microphone. So I'll make a comment on behalf of the school committee. We do very well relative to being able to project what we do here to you, both at home on television as well as those in the room. I also want to comment that Dave kept the meeting on schedule last week, and I know that Amber commented on that, and, which is what I normally do.
Try to fill in for you, Steve. I try.
Yeah. Oh, you did well. You did well. And so the last point is in being able to be in the audience, I guess, and watching what we do here as the school committee, is that we have very open discussions about those issues that come before us. And in fact, as a result of that open discussion, you get the difference of opinion between us sitting here on this side of the table, as well as comments that come to us from the audience. And as a result of that, that is our job, in my opinion, to be able to be open and express to you how we do our business and the way it works. And also, although I haven't found our minutes on the website, I'm sure they're there.
They're there.
And as a result of that, basically everything we do is open to the public, not only for your scrutiny, but to have you come down and talk to us when you need to. So that was, I guess, my benefit and learning experience as a result of having to do work in Mexico and not being at this meeting the last time.
It was like we got a little review.
Yes, you did.
No, that's good.
So,
I know, we appreciate
again, I
the
comment
feedback.
on all of you
Yeah.
being here and doing your work, because it's impressive.
I just wanted to add one thing, and I think we need to take a moment as a committee. Steve, every single time you do your report on the multitude of construction projects that are going on, you are running all over this town to help coordinate that, but even more so to keep us informed. And I really thank you for all of your coordination on that, because with as much as we are trying to accommodate, as much as we are trying to conform to the growth that we're dealing with, to the things that need to be fixed, there are a lot of moving pieces, and your history, your experience, your talent in how these things need to work, and your ability to coordinate and share back with us is amazing, and I really want to thank you for that.
Well, I thank you for your comments, but as I said to the teachers, it's a labor of love, and in fact, you wouldn't get that service from me if I wasn't happy doing it. And I think we all have that. It's been a pleasure for me since 1975 to be involved with all the things that I've been involved with for the town, and this is a place where I live, and this is the contribution that I felt was important for me to do on behalf of all the things I've gotten from the town in the process. So thank you.
Wait, I'm getting nervous. It's not your retirement, right?
No. Steven's not
I was
going
like, he's
anywhere.
retired.
That chair is locked
That's
to
what he
the
was
table.
No, I don't intend to. I don't intend
No,
to.
we got things to build.
We got many other things to do.
From another project. Thank you. That was great. I appreciate the feedback from not being here. That's great.
Close to the mic, remember.
I know. I'm guilty of that. Sorry. It's Ranger Nation Day, so thank you, everyone who wore your Ranger gear. Importantly, enough though, the school challenge is bringing in about $15,000 towards the project, which is incredible. So we thank everyone for their donations and their
Wow, they really
consideration.
stepped up. The nation stepped up.
Ranger
I love
Nation.
it. That's
So we
exciting.
kind of made up Ranger Nation Day just to end this challenge and stuff. So I don't know, I was talking to some people and maybe we can make Ranger Nation Day eventually into a thing, like maybe a give back day or a volunteer day,
definitely.
or have the high schoolers come to the elementary schools and do that
I love it.
slapping hands things that everyone sees on the internet. I don't know, one of those kind of things. So maybe we can make Ranger Nation Day something going forward. So we can talk about that.
I like that.
Yeah. And then also Middlesex Savings Bank also gave the Rangers on Track a boost this week. They are going to contribute a grant for $20,000.
That's exciting.
So that's a big boost. So we got some, Irene looks happy. So we got a big boost this week. So thank you, everyone. So we're getting there.
Yeah.
And the turf is gone, so it's happening. Let's see, what else? I also wanted to thank Project Graduation, like Amber said. She said it very eloquently, but the amount of work and time that goes into that, past parents, current parents, future parents, everyone. I know, it's a huge, local businesses, donate all the food. I mean, it's incredible.
The decorations are unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
They
I
do
saw
reuse
pictures for the
those.
first time this year, and
Well,
we have a friend who's
a hush-hush thing.
Yeah, it's a hush
an
hush.
11th grader,
Yeah.
senior, or 11th grader, and it's the 11th grade parents are the ones who volunteer
That
to pay
night.
it forward
Yep.
so that the students can really enjoy their
Yeah.
senior year. It's an impressive
It's
thing.
amazing.
They do reuse a lot of the decorations for the 8th grade dance.
Next year, I'll
which is
take
this
you
Friday.
guys, I'll take you on the
Yeah.
tour so you see it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the eighth grade dance will be a safari theme on Friday night. We also have another friend in the closet over there, another Wizard of Oz that works with us. James from Westborough TV is graduating this week from Assabet Valley Collaborative. So we have a little present for him and a little card. So James, you got to come out.
Has graduated. Graduated
No,
last
no.
year.
He is kind of
he's
like,
Saturday.
he's kind of
This
Wizard of
Saturday?
Oz-ish. He is kind of behind the curtain. I like that analogy.
Hey, James.
Yay, James.
How are you?
Thank you.
You're not going anywhere, right?
Hopefully not.
Okay.
Karen was my last meeting though, and I told her she was joking.
Okay.
Yeah, I think she's
So James, just as a sample of what James does, that I called him on my way in and I said, I have to do a quick video to say goodbye to John Badenhausen. Will you meet me? He goes, I'll go over to Westborough TV, set it up. So when I got here, I ran over there. He videoed me and then we ran over here. So, I mean, James does, he's living
involved in a
lots
lot
of
in
lives
this
across
town.
this
He
community.
really helps out.
It's amazing what he already gives back here. He's such a young man. Thank you. You
Yes,
gotta
I
look.
want
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Look at that.
Thank you.
Ranger gear.
Yeah.
I'll make you try it on like my mom would. Thank you, James. So he's not going anywhere, which is nice. But congratulations on all your accomplishments. I think that's all I have.
Steven, did you want to?
Yeah, I just
Steve,
want to make
another-
a point about the 11th grade parents who pay forward, as Dave said, in regards to Project Graduation. I had my chance when it was my turn. It was a lot of fun, we enjoyed it, but I certainly put a pitch out to any 11th grade parent who wants to participate in that program, because first of all, not only is it fun, but more importantly, the whole process is to make sure that our kids are safe.
Yeah.
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 And so far,
That's-
so good for a
that's
very
right.
long time.
That's right. I agree.
Yes, excellent. All
All right.
right, anything else from the committee? No. Citizens request. Ooh, we're right on time. Any citizens want to make a request? Nope. Looks good.
That's good.
All right. Thank you.
So
Moving-
I will turn it over
capital
to
requests.
Irene. So annually, we do a capital update. It's a process that we've really tried to anchor here, and I'll let her talk a little bit about it, and then welcome Bob Ferguson to share.
Yeah, so if you recall, we really didn't have a structured 5-year capital plan And so a couple of years ago, I worked with the facility department to come up with that format, and we've put it before you several times. And we're continually adding to it, changing it to improve it so it's more friendly and better understandable, and there's more thought put into it, and cost estimates that are more accurate and so forth. And most recently, working with our Director of Buildings and Grounds, Bob Ferguson, who was employed last year. It's a year now, right, Bob? Yeah.
Yeah.
So with his assistance and guiding the Assistant Director working on this, he has a well-planned out plan. And I'll let Bob, I won't take it away from you, Bob, but just to highlight that there are 3 tabs within this plan. One would be your 5-year capital plan, which is, sorry, the 5-year warrant article capital plan, and those would be the recommendations according to each year as to what the department recommends to the school committee to bring forth to the town on the next cycle of the warrant articles. There's a process by which we need to lead up to making it an official article for the warrant. So we're bringing it before you now so that you have plenty of time, and we have plenty of time to prepare that paperwork. And then we have our general fund budget projects, and Bob will explain some of those projects. Those are projects that are built into our general fund budget that will be, or plan to be, completed during next fiscal year. And then we have our 5-year capital plan, where Bob will explain those as well. Some major projects that are around 100,000 each, 80 to 120,000. So Bob, would you like to give your presentation?
Good evening.
Welcome.
I want to make sure I speak in here correctly.
There you go. Good job, Bob.
I would like to recognize Steve. I don't know how he does it all, but he's there all the time. In short notice, tomorrow we have a meeting at
Here's your
at
short
12
notice.
12 noon to negotiate the design contract for the security and card reading BDA system, bidirectional antenna system at the high school, and hopefully we'll get that on track.
You can just pull the mic near.
Yeah,
there.
Is that better?
Yes, much better.
Okay, so you've seen a lot of this plan before. We kind of restructured it and reorganized it with reality in mind. And, with the understanding of the financial strains in the town, we've tried to spread it out in a realistic fashion so that it can be funded. So the first tab is the 5-year capital allocation requests. It has all school parking lots, which you've seen before. We spread that out over 4 years, total of $400,000 over a 4-year period of time, or 5-year period of time. The Armstrong School roof will need to be done at some point in time. Right now it's okay, but we anticipate that that's going to need some attention. So that's funded at $120,000, like 3 years out. And that pretty much took care of the 5-year capital allocation request tab, because we moved a lot of those more expensive items or more costly items to the town warrant tab, because that's really where it belongs.
And these are the items, just to refresh your memory, these would be the items that we complete paperwork, we present to the town capital advisory committee. It's not ones that we would take to town meeting on our own, so this would be flushed through that committee.
Okay.
If we could go to the next tab, please. So this is the general fund budget, and this isn't a totally comprehensive plan. We didn't list every single thing we're doing. We just highlighted the ones that we think are of interest and more costly than some of the smaller projects. The first one is the all schools exterior painting. As you probably recognize from driving around town, the schools could all use a facelift, so we kind of funded that over a 5-year period at $25,000 a year, and hopefully we'll be able to take care of it little by little for $125,000 total. The second line is the interior painting, same story. If you've been through the Hastings School, the Hastings really needs an interior painting job, and we're hoping at the end of the Hastings project, the plan, I think right now, is to try and include that in the project if there's any money left in the contingency fund. It's more cost-effective to have the contractor, while they're on-site, actually come in, and we can do a change order directive and have them do that with project-funded money. Hopefully that's the case. But in any event, again, we funded that $20,000 a year over 5 years, $100,000. The third line is the fire-rated door assessment and replacements needed throughout the school districts. I have gone out and received different pricing for replacing some of the doors. If you've been to the high school, there's a lot of doors at the high school that really are deteriorating to the point that they should be replaced. Some have already undergone repairs, but it's really not suitable. Some of these doors really need to be replaced. So we funded that over a 3-year period, $35,000, $15,000, $15,000 for a total of $65,000. One of the requests that keep popping up year in and year out is the high school library carpet and JJ flooring quotation, which is the VCT in the library of the high school. They've been asking for this, is my understanding, for several years. It's really needed. The rug in the library has deteriorated to the point that there's some holes, there's some duct tape. It really should be replaced. So we put that on at $150,000, not this year, but the next year out, and hopefully we'll be able to have that funded. The gutters at the schools, right now, if you recall from the Mill Pond School, under the regular construction project that took place back in 2001, 2002, we all understand and know from our history that that building had its issues upon substantial completion that were missed. Some of the portions of the gutters weren't installed correctly. We just had, this past spring, the contractor come in, and we had the contractor fix the gutters, and hopefully, I haven't heard any complaints since he's fixed them.
No, because I was complaining regularly. Every time I would walk in, I would call him and leave him a message about how irritated I was.
Yeah, so it took some time because, it was restrained by the weather. You can only get up on a roof and work when the gutters are relatively dry and there's no ice and snow, and you need some good weather, and we've had a tough spring. So the contractor did obligate his time, and he came and did what he promised to do, and so I think we're in good shape. But we funded that at $10,000 apiece for 5 years, $50,000, because we know at some point in time we're going to have other leaks and other gutters that need to be addressed. The walk-in freezer at the high school, this is a mandate, I believe, by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that under the Emergency Management Act, all food and supplies need to be on an emergency circuit. And currently, for a fallout shelter, for whatever emergency arises. And currently, as we know, the high school walk-in freezer is not on an emergency circuit. So we went out and competitively bid the work and received a bid that's just under $30,000. It's rounded up to $30,000, and that is one of the projects that I'm hoping to have accomplished this summer after the June 30th deadline. We enter into a new fiscal year, and we're going to try and fund these and get these done during the summertime, and that's certainly one of them that should be done and needs to be done quickly. The Mill Pond parking lot signage, that's been a request by the principal for several months, if not years, to have this. As you know, when they pull into the Mill Pond parking lot to have student drop-offs in the morning, you have the parents pulling into a certain area, the buses pull around front, and the staff sometimes arrives at the same time or, in close proximity to one another. So they're bumping into and interfering with each other, and it's very difficult for the staff to come in and park in the designated parking spots for the nurses, the secretaries, whatever, the principal, assistant principal. So we bid that out and received a bid for just under $15,000 to relocate some of the signs, add new signs, and relocate them in the second row instead of the first row. So that should work out a lot better for coordinating the arrival of students in the morning, and the staff will certainly be pleased with that. So that's not an expensive item, and that's something that I look to get accomplished this summer as well, as soon as we end the fiscal year. The principal at the Gibbons School has requested a greenhouse. There's a greenhouse that's in the atrium area, the courtyard in between the building. Right now, that is pretty much useless. It's been there, it's seen its life, and it needs to be removed and demoed. And I'm working with Jack Foley, the principal, to try and get prices on that to find out what it's going to take to get that replaced.
I think I'm anticipating that that's a fundraising project, but that we want to have it costed out effectively, know where we are with it. But I think, as of now, I think once we get a cost, we'll look at whether or not that stays in here or moves to a fundraising event.
The next item on the list is the high school AC system for the competition gymnasium. As everybody here in town recognizes, when, that high school competition gym sees plenty of use, and in weather when we have 90% or 97% humidity like we did this past week, to function in that area is unbelievably difficult. So it's been on the request board for a number of years. Put that out for competitive bid through the Combine system, advertised it in the Central Register, and actually tomorrow we will have the site walk down at the high school. I expect to see 7 to 10 contractors, I hope. I know I've been notified by at least 7 that are pre-registered for the walk down to come in and give us a price for what it would take to provide air conditioning to that space at the competition high school gymnasium. So hopefully we can get that off the ground and maybe even fund that someday soon. I have to be determined because we don't have a price on that yet.
And so, might I add that the $150,000 for the carpeting in the library, because of the money, the dollar amount, that may be shifted over maybe to the capital committee. We're still trying to determine that. And the other thing, Bob, was could you talk a little bit about the HVAC controls and then the high school drainage culvert?
Sure. Well, the high school drainage culvert adjacent to the access road in and out adjacent to the field that's now being renovated, that's pretty much a mandate from the Conservation Committee here in town that that culvert needs to be cleaned, and the funding is going to come from the school department apparently. So went out and had met with the conservation agent, Derek, I believe, and with a contractor, and we did receive a competitive quotation several months ago, and I have reconfirmed that quotation. That quotation will be honored for several months going forward, and hopefully that work will progress as well, starting in July.
That's a must-do this summer.
Scroll down, please.
And then the HVAC controls, that's an ongoing. Bill Garbarino.
Okay.
Right there.
All right, so the HVAC controls, of course, we do have Bill Garbarino, who's a very talented maintenance person. He's like our lead maintenance person, and he's a very talented HVAC guy. He knows his stuff inside and out. He's been to school, as you know, for several years, and he has anticipated that the controls are now to a point where they're going to start deteriorating rapidly, and he needs to fund that. So this is a contingency funding plan to make sure that, the controls are replenished when they need to be replenished. And some of the controls actually are being purchased in advance because the systems are so archaic or getting so old that the manufacturers aren't going to be manufacturing replacement parts. So we need to really get on that, and Bill has been very diligent in making sure that he's on top of that. Next tab, please. So as Irene had mentioned, some of these used to be on the capital plan, but we do understand that the capital committee is capped with their own limits for funding. So we moved some of these items that you probably saw previously onto the 5-year warrant article request. The Mill Pond parking lot expansion, that figure is high. I went to the town and worked with the town engineer, Carl Bolduff, and Carl was very, very responsive in turning around drawings for us, and I have a couple of the drawings in the PowerPoint presentation that Dan will bring up in a minute, but he was very, very good about finding out what we could do at the Mill Pond parking lot in order to, meet the town requirements, see if we could avoid a site plan, and he talked with the building commissioner, and I believe that, we'll be able to get around some of this stuff. It wouldn't be necessary to have a site plan, as I understand it. In the final analysis, the drawings came up with an expansion of 34 to 37 parking slots. In addition, and anybody that's been to the Mill Pond School at any period of time, it's desperately needed. So this is one of the projects that I'm hoping can get funded, in a timely fashion, and it'll certainly, again, please the staff and the community because it's really needed. So I did get a competitive price. It's a rough order of magnitude price. We don't want to have these contractors go out and completely spin their wheels prematurely, but we want to get the nod from the committee that, yes, this is on the radar, would like to fund it. And actually, the figure that I received just this week from the contractor was somewhere in the vicinity of $230,000. So it's under 300, and that will involve, installing sidewalks, paving, removing the topsoil, putting in the bank gravel, compacting all of the bank gravel, installing conduits for the extra lighting, street lights that'll be necessary, and sidewalks and curbs. So there's a lot of work involved, so, but it should be done. But anyway, that's that.
Put the layouts.
Yeah, if we could, if you wouldn't mind bringing the two layouts
Got
up.
two different ones. This is
If-
layout one.
Yeah, so this is layout one, and the difference is, if I had my pointer with me, I'd point to it, but the,
Right there.
yep, but the area where it says 24 feet at the radius, Dan, at the radius, or at the top,
Back.
on the, right there, yep. That piece right there, that oval spot, is the difference between Plan 1 and Plan 2, and I think it's for easy entrance and exit and for plowing. So the second plan would just be striped as opposed to an island. So my recommendation would be go to the second plan here, because that striped area, it would be just a striped lined area. It wouldn't be a parking area, but when they come in to plow or drive, it's just much easier to navigate than to try and navigate around an island,
You
so.
don't need the.
Right, exactly, and it's less costly, I believe.
Yeah.
So this would
Everyone
provide
doesn't
enough
have
parking, and that's in the area, as you can see if you're familiar with the Mill Pond School, that's just a grassy area, and I do have some photographs that we can bring up that Irene asked me to take, just to familiarize people and refresh their recollection of where this may be in your own mind, so you can get a sense of where it is. This is as you come in around the radius, that's the grassy field that we'd like to, turn into a parking lot.
I think the difference between the two plans are also more parking spaces.
Yes, there's a difference in
Like
three
the
parking
spaces on the
spaces.
curve
Mhm.
versus the,
Right.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, for anyone who's ever been to an event, and it doesn't have to be a school event, there are many community events held at Mill Pond, that driveway coming in there becomes a nightmare as soon as spots are full, because people will then park along the edge.
Right.
And you go from what was 2 lanes and tight at 2 lanes to now single lanes but two-way traffic, and this is very needed right now.
Excellent. Thank you.
I guess just to speak to the original construction, when Mill Pond was first occupied in 2002, 2003, we were probably only using 30 of the 44 classrooms that were in there. Now we're using all of the classrooms, and obviously the way we've allocated teachers based on the requirements of the Department of Education is even more dense than it was then. So this is the expansion space that was designed into the project for this purpose, and obviously now it's time.
Yeah, that's great.
The schools have certainly undergone a large population growth everywhere, not just in
Really?
Westborough, but, yeah. All right, so we can go back to the slides, please.
I hadn't noticed.
Back to the planner tab. Thank you. All right. So I spoke to the high school security camera system. Of course, that was passed at town meeting on March 17th for $400,000. The designer is coming in tomorrow. That was selected to sit down and negotiate the contract and the price, and hopefully that'll proceed. The plan, again, originally would be to have this work completed during the summer. Right now, not to get too optimistic, but I expect that by the end of the summer, we hope to have at least a card reading system in place, the bidirectional antenna system in place, and some of the cameras, if not all the cameras. If it's not completed by the time school opens in that fashion, then the plan is to have the contractor work on Columbus Day, Veterans Day, and certainly, hopefully, by the end of Thanksgiving vacation, the system hopefully will be 100% complete. So that's the plan. The next item on the list is the high school roof. It's seen its better days. Again, we've pushed this out. Thank God we have leaks here and there, but we address the leaks as they come, and there are certain areas that we are aware of that consistently leak, that we've repaired on several occasions, but eventually these roofs are going to have to be corrected. And if you remember from one of our previous discussions here at the school committee, we had spread out that $1,600,000 over several years, but it was determined, and I think rightfully so, that in order to get the biggest bang for your buck, it should be done all at once, if you remember, and so that we put it all on this particular line item.
Just as a point of reference, I know the roof was redone with renovation, right?
The new renovation, yeah. The old roof was not replaced at the time because it was relatively new when we began the construction. But that's roughly 2000. It's 18 years later.
18 years ago.
Yeah.
Right, I was trying to get that marker
Yeah.
when that was.
So I mean, there might be a few years left in what's on the renovated section as well as the old roof, but
But you're already looking 3 to 4 years out anyway.
in hand in order to fix it, so.
So the next item is the high school exterior rim. Anybody who's been to the high school, if you look up at the exterior rim, it's a concrete rim with rebar that is very close to the surface that is rusted out, and as a consequence of the rebar actually rusting so close to the surface of the concrete, it pops the concrete off. So there was some concern at some point that this concrete may in fact fall and hit somebody in small pieces for the most part. We've been keeping a very close eye on it, and to be honest with you, I think the pieces that have been falling are very few and far between, but that should be eventually addressed. And I know our building commissioner has mentioned during some of the meetings that we've attended, that's one of his pet peeves, as well as I understand it, is making sure that we have the depth required for the rebar to be encased in the concrete with enough coverage so that this problem doesn't occur. The high school, the rim was actually, if I remember, or if I understand, it was a precast rim. It wasn't poured in place, but it was set in place. It was manufactured off-site, brought to the high school and installed. So in any event, we allocated $500,000 in the event that it deteriorates to the point where large chunks are going to chip off, which I don't anticipate, but we have it there just so it's on our radar.
Yeah. And so one of the other things that we're considering is we may just combine the roof and the rim at the same time. Not sure if how that's, we were talking about how it affects each other and,
right,
and tearing back the roof once you put the roof on and vice versa. So, and depending upon how, as Bob has indicated, that if it deteriorates to a point that we have to do it sooner, we may recommend bringing the roof replacement sooner as well.
So we're keeping a close eye on it. So this last item, the high school front entrance, the concrete sidewalks, curbing, and the upper parking lot with the guardrail and the stairwells have deteriorated. I know, you know, I had presented photographs one of the last meetings that we had and addressed this. So this is something that really is desperately needed. You know, it should really be moved, you know, sooner rather than later. We allocated $525,000 for that work based on, again, town engineers' input and contracting input. So that's, I believe that's a pretty accurate figure, as I understand it. And again, the contractor is honoring, you know, they can't honor it forever, but, you know, for the time being, if it was done a year from now, I think that that price would still be good. But, you know, we have it set for 2020, 2021, but to be honest with you, I'm surprised that the guardrails up at the high school have lasted through the winter with the snow load on it, and it's really a safety concern. So you might want to take a ride through there and really take a peek at it yourself, and then if we need to move it closer sooner rather than later, that's probably the best thing to do for safety's sake. And that's it.
Is there anything we can do for those just rails in between there?
I'm sorry?
Is there a quicker fix just for the railings between now and
Not really.
Not
The
really.
way it was constructed is it's in an embankment, and the footings for the railings are set in the embankment. The embankment's failed, so there's really no quick fix. If you remember, we actually had to take down one of the light poles that was leaning, you know, to the extent that I was afraid it was going to fall, so I had it removed, and it's set in storage for the time being at the top of the hill. But,
one of the things I would suggest relative to the design of the replacement guardrails, I guess we'll call it guardrails. The original construction for the high school was timber posts and timber rails. And I guess as an aside in this discussion, in the old days when people were having their kids drive cars, they used to go to you know, shopping centers and others that were closed on Sunday. So the only parking lot that was available for somebody to do that was the upper parking lot at the high school. A few years ago, somebody did that, and the kid actually lost control of their car, ran into one of those horizontal posts, guardrails between posts, and the replacement cost for that piece of wood was $650. So what I'm recommending is that we replace it with a normal W guardrail, steel guardrail. And in fact, we might even ask the DPW to see what a contract to do that would be, because the vertical posts can be driven to the depth they need in order to get support. It might be a lot cheaper than the price that you might have gotten received for replacement in kind.
Okay.
Clearly, that architectural feature was great when it was brand new, but I don't think anybody would find it attractive today.
No, I don't think so. I think actually we discussed that with Carl, and I think Carl is making the same recommendation that you just made. So I hope we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
I hope that's the case, but we'll revisit it when the funding comes up. But again, sooner rather than later would be the request from me. In any event, that's all I have to present. If you have any questions, I'll try and answer what I can.
Thank you. Anybody?
Thank you, Robert.
Questions?
Thank you, Robert.
Comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's keep our fingers crossed for tomorrow. Yeah.
So the next recommendation to bring forward would be the Mill Pond parking lot expansion.
Right.
So I would think that in order to give us, I just want to remind people on process, and do you want to talk a little bit about that, or you want me just to fill in and you can come back in? I would just.
Yeah, go ahead.
Irene and I have talked about the fact she and Steve and Bob in tandem have gotten us back in line with the capital committee to make sure that they have this trajectory of knowledge around our projects. I feel very good that we finally have kind of a stable document to work off of here with more legitimate and clear numbers and a plan. So I would think that it might be purposeful for you to make a recommendation to authorize Bob and Irene and I to release for the August.
Town warrant.
Right, because we have to hit that August deadline for the October warrant.
Yeah, and with the summer coming,
So
we
it
actually
gets
want
us
to prep
every
it.
time, and so
Yeah.
I would think that we would want to forward an update. So can you
Can I
speak to that?
interject?
Sure.
I'm not so sure that we necessarily need it for the October. We're trying to get in the cycle for the normal March warrant, and to do so, we would have to get into the October capital committee.
So you're
for their
comfortable
deadline.
waiting?
Yes, unless, Bob, you think that we,
The only one I wouldn't be comfortable waiting would be one of the contractors that we had in to fix some of the catch basins at the high school before the graduation. We went up and reassessed that guardrail situation again and took a look at it. And this contract also does some of the plowing in town. And he was amazed that it actually survived the winter with the plow. So that heightened our awareness of the severity of the situation. So
so
if we can get that,
But that's according to your chart here, is that a 20?
That's a 2020, 2021. I'd like to,
So
if we could
is that
move
almost
up.
a swap of that in Mill Pond, or moving that to at least the 1920 so that we can discuss it in next year's?
That'd make more sense to me, yeah.
Well, one of the things you know about the Capital Expenditures Committee process is that that we make the submittal and we also put a date on when we think they're going to go. I would suggest we put them both in there with the dates that we would expect them to go, and that as soon as you have sufficient documentation, put it in a letter or a memo to the Capital Expenditures Committee, even if it's a month from now. Because
Yeah.
once it's in the pipeline, we can't be accused of not telling anybody what we want to do.
yeah,
Right, I
so what I
think-
did last year was, we had presented to you, and then over the summer, the letter with the plan went to the Christy Williams, so that she was aware of it, and with the understanding that we're aware of the deadline being in October, but just to give them, as you had suggested, that, and it seemed to work really well. So what we can do is we can update this to move the 525,000 from 2020-21 over to 1920, along with the Mill Pond parking lot expansion,
And put
with a
both of
cover
them
memo,
forward.
and knowing that when we get to committee and present to committee, most likely they'll say, take it out of committee and put it on town floor on your own warrant
Right.
because of the dollar amount. But it's the process, and we're following
expectation
it,
would-
and expectation, and.
So expectation is that this would come to town floor in March of next year for
Right.
both of those.
Correct.
But it does need to be vetted by the other committees of the
Yeah.
town, so they understand where this goes relative to other things like fire engines or ambulances and, all the other things that the town
Mhm.
does and builds.
Yeah.
For us, it's significant and, needs to be considered, since certainly the guardrail issue is a safety issue for everybody in town, not just the kids in the high school.
It's a safety issue, and based on what you said, it's a cost issue as it continues to deteriorate.
So no action is required now, other than using the discussion of this meeting. Thank you very much for the insights. For Bob and Irene to move forward to make some updates. You've got some harder numbers on a couple of those. So we can put those in and have it ready for this, and Irene should then submit it as she just articulated this summer for the, well, October. You send them the update. All
So
right.
we'll have some time
That's
in
perfect.
September on one
Yep.
of your meetings to make that
All right.
That's
recommendation.
fine. Oh, that's
Perfect,
good.
thank you.
Yeah.
I'm very happy to have
Thank
a
you.
solid plan. It makes me,
Me too.
it makes me very happy.
And a
Thank you.
well-thought-out
Yeah.
plan.
Sarah, you want to recognize Beth? I think she wanted to say something about this.
Oh, I'm sorry, Beth. Thank you.
Come up to the mic, Beth, please.
Sorry, Beth Blumberg, 6 Garfield Drive, Finance Committee. I just want to make sure that you put that 1.6 million on people's minds as well, because it's a big enough bump that people are going to be like, wait, can we move it this way? Can we move it that way? And if you have a target year, I want to make sure somebody doesn't move it back 3 years, which the roof, it sounds like, doesn't have.
Right.
So put that one, in your letter solidly, like, we have this 1.6 million coming up, and possibly needs sooner rather than later.
So
just to make it
we'll
clear.
transparently make sure, I mean, this spreadsheet, I think, has become effective for that committee, and I think Christy does a great job to really go through it really carefully, and Steve's on the committee, so we'll make sure we do
Right.
that.
Based on the dollar amount you're suggesting we
Yeah, I'm
included
just
in the memo.
suggesting that's an eye-opener amount that will cause people to pause and go, really? The roof? Do we have to? Can we delay a year? My roof doesn't cost that much. And I just think the sooner that one is on people's horizon, it's coming, sort of throughout, because I could see somebody going, but that's the year the, XYZ is coming, it's big, so let's delay this one.
So that's
thank
that's
you.
part of our discussion when we go to meet with this committee. We also highlight these other items that are down the line there, so we, good suggestion, we will highlight that as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
And I guess just to point out how important these issues are, that's what happens when you don't do it right.
Yeah, there's a nice little patch up there.
It was a major discussion today, an hour's discussion actually, at the Municipal Building Committee as to getting the roof fixed here correctly, so that can be repaired.
This is that moment where we need James to pan the camera
I know,
up so that
Steve-
the audience can see the ceiling.
Steve's
We're
pointing
all
out
looking
water
up.
water
There's water
damage.
damage and a
On the
patch
ceiling.
that's been done in the
Yeah, it's on this beam
ceiling
right
here
here.
on this beam.
Yeah.
And the back beam, yeah.
There's some water damage in Town Hall if anyone wants to stop by.
I know.
Come to a school committee meeting, come to a board of selectmen meeting anytime.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one
Yeah.
back there too.
All right, let's keep moving.
All right, thank you. Okay, thank you, Bob. We appreciate it. And Irene, thank you for
Thank you,
organizing all
Bob.
that.
And you
It's
should
great,
have Thank you,
very organized. We appreciate it.
And we should send Bob home, so we
Yeah.
should thank him for being here and
Thank you for
make
coming,
sure he
Robert.
heads out. Thank you
you.
very
See you tomorrow.
much.
Thank you. So we have, we are going to vote to accept the Rangers on Track donations. Rangers on Track has been accumulating funds. We are goal of raising $500,000 towards the athletic facilities renovation project. And I think this summer we're going to need some of that money. So we'd like to receive the gift.
I would like to,
on track.
I guess, make a motion to receive the money donated to the Rangers on Track with gratitude for the interest of all those who gave the money, and certainly now they can see where it's going to go, into the athletic field and perhaps others' uses as well.
I enthusiastically second that motion.
Wow, this is easy. Any discussion? Nope. All in favor? Thank you.
So I want to add one important piece that I think for public record, we want to be clear that the funding that you've just allowed to come over into, accepted, will come into the account that Irene is then managing the payment of the project out of. And it does not meet all of our needs yet.
Right, we
And
still
I
need to
think
raise
that we
more.
need to be clear that you're basically just bringing over what has been fundraised thus far by Rangers on Track, bringing it over so that Irene can access it to keep the project moving forward. And we need to finalize raising probably close to another $200,000.
Correct.
I think it's very important for people to realize that the school committee committed to us targeting $500,000 and we need to hit that number. People are doing an amazing job. We've made a huge dent, and those funds coming over now so we can keep accessing them to keep the project moving forward is important. I want to be clear that we tabled pieces of the project that we are not able to do because we don't have the funding yet. And that we also have been clear that in order to turn those lights on, we have to hit 500. So I think people need to keep their energy going. I want to be clear in our messaging, and I want to thank people who have been stepping up. And I think it's a lot of those smaller donations that can add up, and I want to encourage people to keep making those, as well as really going for some additional targeted large donations.
Yeah, so the cash flow, just to give you a perspective, right now we're already making payments. And so in order to keep the cash flow in alignment with the invoices coming in, if you think about the project being completed by the start of the school, is that correct? So too is paying our vendors and our companies and subcontractors, and so therefore the summer is the big push to get that funding in.
Mm-hmm. So I guess a point to that is that obviously until you have the money, you can't release that part of the job that you don't, that currently we don't have money for. And since the contractor's schedule is to complete what he is authorized to do between now and, let's say, nominally the beginning of school, there is a point for which you can't get things done because you can't release the money, release the project because you don't have the money. So it is very important that, in fact, people understand how quickly that amount of money has to be raised. And I guess also to be specific, these gifts are being targeted for the athletic field program that's going on right now at the high school.
Thank you. I just want to make sure we were clear. And thank you again to everybody who's donated. It's been very exciting, a lot of hard work.
Yes, thank you. Great. Thank you. Good clarification. We appreciate it. Okay, we will now hear from our bus company first student. We're going to give us their annual report.
So Jessica, who is our regional manager, and Linda, who is our local manager, have been before you. I hope you remember them, and you've asked them to come back to give specifics to Westborough data, and so they've done a better job with grabbing that data so that it's pertinent to our district here and can answer any questions that you might have.
We also welcome Cindy Crowley, who's in the audience, who's our transportation coordinator, and I want to just indicate that they work together on the majority of these pieces, and so Cindy being here to help clarify or answer questions is important as well.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for inviting us here, just to kind of go through the statistics of where we are so far from a school year perspective. So just to outline it from a routes perspective, we have 26 routes, 4 separate kindergarten routes. We have 36 drivers, 2 spare drivers. We have 10 AM, PM wagons, which are the minivans that you might see around, and then 6 of the noontime kindergarten. This year, we hired 5 new drivers. We had 6 drivers that separated from us for one reason or another. Each of our drivers, and I want to specify these are seasoned drivers or new drivers, but in addition to their training, have 8 hours of safety training throughout the year. Our on-time percentage, and just to be clear of what that means, that is our on-time percentage from our AM and PM routes on a daily basis. That is not trips. We do not have that technology since the trips change on a day-to-day basis, but these are stable. We have specific times in which we expect our buses to be there, and so that's a 96.9%. That's specific to Westborough. And then the question came up of what our percentage was of combined routes. So we looked at it. It's 0.6% of the time this year we had 2 combined routes. Now, one thing I want to mention on that is when we do, and we do not like 2 combined routes, but sometimes for one reason or another we have to combine routes. Because of the way our routing is done, it's oftentimes the same routes that are affected. So sometimes, if we look through it, there were probably 5 or 6 routes that we had combined, there's only flexibility in those routes, and that's why you see that consistently on some routes. So it might seem more to other people, but that's because our overall percentage isn't like that. So just to clarify that a little bit more.
So, Jess, if I'm understanding what you had just indicated, is that some of our routes are, we have more flexibility to combine versus others that there's no way that we could combine. So that's why we're seeing those routes always the ones that are combined.
So a 0.6 may look like a low number to us, or 0.6 may not look like an accurate number because we're used to the same route being combined over and over again.
Yes, and then there's a lot of other routes that never see a combination whatsoever.
Understood.
So that's where I think people might say, oh, that seems really low, or, well, my route has never been combined, so.
So just to understand percentages, HTS on-time percentage to schedule, what is that is per day number of time?
So the way that we look at that is not to the bell times, but to what time we schedule it. So if our route is scheduled to be there, or the bus is scheduled to be there 10 minutes prior to the bell ring, then it's 96.9% of the time they are there 10 minutes prior to the bell ring.
And do you measure each route morning and night separately?
Yes, everything is everything is measured separately.
So essentially every route that exists on our network happens 3 times, or every route happens twice a day.
360 times a year, so.
So how many routes do we have total? Because I know how many buses we have, but how many routes do we have each morning?
So you have for you have
3 tiers. So you have each bus runs for 3 different routes.
So
and we have 22 buses.
22 buses each time, each one 3 different routes twice a day.
Correct.
Okay, so we have 66, 132 routes each day. And you're saying 96.9% of them are on time?
Correct.
Okay. Just making sure I understand what our percentage is out of.
Yeah.
Because based on that, that means that every day there's 5 buses that are late, or 6 or so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just
making sure we're all clear on numbers, right? Because when you look and go, oh, 96.9, that looks great. But if there's 132 routes a day, then 96.9 or 97% of them being on time means that 3 or 7 or 8 are probably late every day.
So just to also clarify, it's not to the bell time. So if they're
not to the bell time, it's to when you expect to get there.
Schedule that we have provided to you guys. So.
And we appreciate that.
Yeah, they're not necessarily late to school, but if it's 10 minutes, they could have 6 minutes rather than the 10. So that's what we base it on.
Just making sure we understand percentages when we look at numbers. Thank you.
So. So as far as equipment goes, we have 27 buses, we have 10 wagons, and 5 mini buses. We will also be adding a bus that is completely contract compliant for next school year for the additional route. The breakdowns for the breakdowns and accidents, we had 4 preventable and 4 non-preventable this school year. And I just want to be clear about what an accident is to us. Everything is an accident. If someone backs up a bus and taps a pole, that is an accident. One accident is too many, but I want to be clear when we say that we're not saying, there was a huge collision and the bus was towed off to the shop, and just to clarify what that means for us from an accident perspective.
And you have not had any of those major accidents this year? Okay.
No.
Please.
No,
school's not done.
On the road breakdowns, we had 17 breakdowns this year. So what the definition for on the road breakdowns means for us is, for some reason or another, we would have to swap out a bus. So if we felt like a bus was overheating, something was not working, a light wasn't working, we would be sending another bus. So anytime we had to swap out a bus, whether it was towed or could be fixed on the spot, anytime we had to switch out a bus, that's what we identified as on the road breakdowns. There's also, and I don't know how many of you have it, there's a spreadsheet that we send out to the school department, and I know some of you have viewed it. I don't think it was as clear as any of the maintenance issues of which ones were breakdowns, so we're going to clarify that a little bit more moving forward to make sure that information is more transparent. The next thing is preventive maintenance. So just to understand what that is all of our buses we have an expectation that they are serviced every 3 months, 4 times a year. We have a goal of that they are completed 2 weeks before. Our shop is in our Marlborough. Our shop is in Marlborough, and we had 100% for the school year. We were always 2 weeks ahead of schedule, and that is, so we measure every location on that. So this location always had 100%, always had every single bus on schedule and on track to do preventive maintenance. So just some of the things that we were involved in the community is we did donate a bus to transport residents for the centennial celebration, and then in addition we did donate buses to transport separately for the parade. I think they were both part of the centennial celebration.
Tricentennial.
Tricentennial, excuse me.
That's my fault.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
And thank you very much, that was very helpful.
So if you want to go to the next slide. So just some updates, some of the things that we have talked about in the past. The First View app, which we have talked about a few times, there's really no status change. The new vehicles, we will make sure there is a bus for the new route starting next school year. As far as the routing for the bell changes, we are working on finalizing all the routes, and from a staffing perspective, we are hiring a new staff member to support our location. So we're in the midst of reviewing applicants now.
Can I ask 2 quick questions? Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to clarify that the new vehicle is a 77 passenger.
Okay.
It's one of the big buses. And then the staffing, why you're hiring a staffing member is because we are down one staffing at the depot right now.
The lost 6, hired 5, that's why we're down 1, right?
Well,
This is office staff.
office staff, sorry. So,
Sorry.
yes, we had an assistant location manager who we are hiring for that position.
And Lisa, if I can make sure that I understand what you taught me last year, we have a contract that all buses are they're no more than 7 years old, but the way that that is defined by First Student is that you could be 7 years and 11 months is still not 8 years old, is that correct?
It's 10
10
years.
years.
10 and
10 years.
200,000 miles
10 and 200, okay.
Yeah.
for the big bus.
And it's by the start of the contract.
By the start of the contract year.
Yeah.
So you could get a bus that is 11 years old because the start
We
of
won't
the
be getting a
contract
bus
is.
that's
but
11
just-
years. We could, but we won't be. No.
Because I remember when we reviewed this
Yeah.
last year, we basically had a whole lot of buses that left because they were all,
Actually, you've had them all leave.
they
Yeah.
all left, and we got a whole bunch
Yeah.
more that were 7 years old at the time, or 8 years old at the time. That's where I was getting the 7.
And how is our age right now with our?
You should make it to the end of the contract on what's there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Just making sure I understood that point.
Yeah.
No
Question?
problem.
And in terms of finalizing the routes and the bell change, I know that you have run a test scenario once. Is there expectation you're running a test run again? What is your plan with this?
So we will run dry runs at the beginning of the school year. We like to do that when the driver has their route, so they're the ones that are going to be driving that.
So from my question, I think more goes to the parents who are asking me already, the bus schedule is going to change next year because our start times change. When does my kid need to be out? What do I have to figure out? And I truly appreciate that you did the dry run in April because we needed that information. But when I see we're still finalizing that, I know that we are on a hold too,
Yeah.
kind of.
So to answer the dry run, they have their kickoff meeting in August. And at that time, they post their routes, they bid on the routes, they get the run, and then they do the dry run before school starts, so that they know the route, and if there's any issues with that, they bring that back and work with Cindy and make any adjustments that's necessary. As far as the routes for the parents to view, I
Publishing
believe we
times.
were publishing them on our
End of
website
school.
in a draft form by, what,
The end of school.
mid-July?
Our
We're
hope was
in
by the end
spring.
of school, which I
We're
truly appreciate.
releasing-
It's the right thing to
Cindy
do.
and they're on target to release them at the end
What's
of
going
the
on
year.
right now is tweaking, I'm correct, Cindy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the finalizing and publishing ahead of time those two words don't always line up in my vernacular, so I'm
Okay.
trying to
Yeah.
make sure.
Yeah. Well, yeah, even over the summer, new people move into the district, they change a little bit, so that's what,
It's just,
to me, that's what
I want maximum time for parents who
Yep.
are going to be impacted by significant change for the good, for the good of our students, but impacted by significant change, and need to plan their work and schedules and childcare accordingly.
And we did give them, we have released to parents
had
the
released the
PowerPoint, which
original,
gave the first pickup for each tier and the last drop-off, so that people have a window where they know they need to plan. And we will be sending out the drafts close to finalized at the end of school.
And some routes have changed though
Yeah,
too,
but
so
that's-
people
Right.
probably want to appreciate
Yep.
knowing what
Yep.
buses, what number of buses coming in, instead
Yep.
of the old number or whatever.
So, and this is, what worked, and this is kind of from feedback from the school department. There was an improvement from a day-to-day operational perspective throughout the year. We had, outside of the home-to-school routes, we had feedback that overall, there was improvement on our on-time percentage. And then, with the upgrade of the fleet, we had overall our vehicle conditions obviously were much better. Where I think, some areas I think we could do some more work in our next steps is, first of all, from a driver recruitment perspective. So some of the things you will see, very shortly, there will be a billboard put up. We're working with the recruiting team to see what we can do more of to recruit drivers, and that driver shortage is a national issue, but we are working very closely to try to resolve any issues that might affect Westborough. And then just from our next steps, because we understand, and you just made that point about the route changes, just make sure everything flows smoothly for the start of the year with the route changes. So, does anyone have any questions that we can answer?
Yeah, I have one. Let's say that a family has an at-home mother who has the time, if you will, to be a school bus driver. Clearly, we have many who are that. And the person has an interest to become a school bus driver. How do you train that person? What do you do? And the reason why I'm asking is that maybe by this discussion tonight, we might have somebody who comes forward and says, yeah, I could try that and see how it works.
So we have we have trainers throughout our different facilities. Most of our training is done on a one-on-one basis. In the state of Massachusetts, you're required to have at least 60 hours of training. So most of it's done, one-on-one. We have a significant amount of time behind the wheel with them. So they basically come to us. You can even call the location, and we will talk to people about what the expectations are, what some of the challenges is. It's not, as far as I'm concerned, driving a bus full of students is not an easy job at all. But just making, kind of running through what the expectations are around passenger management. And, we invite, everyone that wants to come down and apply.
So what's the window of time typically that it would take from the time that they apply to the time that they actually can get behind the wheel?
So it varies person to person, and it based on how quickly you pick up the skills, because from a safety perspective, we cannot allow a driver out there that we as a company do not feel comfortable with. And also, obviously, the state comes down and does their own inspection and certifies. It can go anywhere from 2 months, I would say, to 3 months.
Okay.
It's probably around average.
Yeah, the average is roughly 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks.
So if someone were to be interested in
they're
it,
quickly, yeah.
now would be the time for them to initiate if they were to start at the beginning of the school year. But that doesn't mean that if they miss that time, that we wouldn't hire them. We would hire any time of the year. For
So my follow-up question then to that is, what kind of driving experience do you give them, and during this training period, are they paid?
Well, yes, they are paid. They actually ride a bus that they might be doing. If I have an open route, they would ride the bus with the driver that's on it to get the experience with children behind them and so forth.
Mhm.
We didn't used to do that, but I feel since I took over, especially in Westborough area and my other 2 locations I had prior to this, it's better experience for them. So they don't get in that bus and all of a sudden say, what am I gonna do? I got all those people behind me. Because driving an empty one and driving 60
Yeah.
people behind is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
And most of them prefer to do it that way.
Yeah, I would posit that any woman with multiple kids is going to find that part something they can do. I would also posit that driving a gigantic yellow truck is a different story, and in fact, for them, that's where their concern would be, is they wouldn't come out for it until they understood that the training program would give them an opportunity to drive a bus without risk somewhere where they can get used to what it is and how big it is and how you turn corners with it and all that stuff.
Yeah, they got that all through training. though.
Yeah, they really are, and that's where the one-on-one training really comes in handy. So if there's any, any particular skill, whether it be backing or turning and maneuvering, where someone has challenges with, the trainer is right there to work with them.
And we have some retirees as well. They're welcome to.
Let's bring back the folks that were here earlier.
And just to state, I know we said it, it does take a long time. We have a number of people already in training right now. So, we are on a good pathway, but, we never know what our landscape is going to look like. And, we expect so many people to return, and, that's where more applicants, I'll never say no to a driver that wants to come on board that can safely drive kids, so.
So when you were before us last year, one of the causes of concern that we had with regards to routes or times or things like that came down to the fact that you said there's a national driver shortage, we need to hire more people, we're having trouble keeping people, and now a year later I'm looking at your numbers and you are net -1 and we're adding a bus, which means we need another person, so we're net -2. So your number one issue was to get more drivers, and we are going in the wrong direction. So I understand you're putting up a billboard that's the end of the year, and you take an average of 8 weeks, maybe longer, to get somebody up on the training. Like, how are we going to be ready for next year?
How many?
I have 2 spare drivers in the lot, and
Okay.
I have 1 in every route, so I'm not down drivers.
Well, but by your numbers, you are.
by where we would
Right.
like to be. So we like to have a spare
Okay.
ratio. So
Yeah.
we're not saying we don't have drivers
Okay.
to run the routes. That's not, we would like to have a little bit more comfort zone, if you will.
Okay.
Does that include substitute drivers then too?
We have two.
So-
And
So you have
I'd
2
like to
spare
have
drivers.
4 sitting there.
So you like to-
Yeah.
Okay.
so in any location, just so how First Student works is, if any locations, if we're really feeling a struggle or a shortage, and we're not talking about, we're a day-to-day where we cannot cover a route. And there are communities in this, goes outside of First Student that is the case. What we do at First Student is we borrow drivers from other locations.
Okay.
So if they have an excess, that's where we bring them from. So, if we have, that's while we're filling in that gap, so.
And often
I've drivers from Fitchburg before and brought them in, so we would have enough to cover.
I just want to make sure, because as I look at numbers, just if you
Yeah.
scroll up the slides to
Yeah.
the first chart, I see you have 2 spare drivers, but your driver separations is
Yeah.
higher than your new drivers hired.
When we first started the school year, I had 7 spare drivers that went to different locations.
So now we're down
Yeah.
to, okay.
So that's why I'm down at
Our
Yeah.
buffer's getting small.
because the drivers want a regular route that nobody wants to spare. They
Yeah.
want a regular route, so if
That's-
something comes up somewhere else, unfortunately, that's how I lose them.
Yeah.
So another question on the line of being able to attract drivers, what is your starting pay for a driver?
Right now, it's 24.04.
An hour?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
with a minimum of 4
a
hours.
day.
Minimum 4 hours a day. Okay.
Lisa, did you have any?
I do. So I have reviewed your mechanical report, as I did last year. And so in the contract, which specifically is 4.1 in the contract, the part about failure to properly maintain buses and/or vans in a manner satisfactory to the school district is in the contract. And the reason I bring this up is because I decided to look at the mechanical report this year versus last year. And the piece that I keep coming across is there, and you mentioned it, that there are some, missing pieces of the information, like the number of breakdowns. So there's only 6 listed, but there were 17.
Well, can I just clarify that?
Yeah.
It just was, it's not that that information wasn't on there. It just wasn't specified that that was a breakdown. The issue was identified, but not that it was a breakdown. So we're just going to include another column that specifies that it's a breakdown. It just wasn't, I think it just wasn't clear in the information that it was a breakdown.
A breakdown.
Yeah.
So that'll be helpful, definitely. Yeah. But the area that I'm most concerned about is that when I looked at August 30th to September 29th, just to sort of look at a month, the first month of school, there were 52 different mechanical reports. And like, Steve mentioned last year, there are a lot of things that happen with buses. Mechanical issues happen all the time.
And it could be as minor as you said last year, a light didn't turn on.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But when I look at, and I only have the report up to May 10th. Okay. So when I look at the 5 weeks up to May 10th, there's only 8 mechanical issues. And the rest of them are preventive maintenance. And the reason I bring that up is because when I look at last year's, there were about 50.
At the end of the year?
Around that time, same kind of thing. So what it feels as if the missing pieces of information are that there are no mechanical issues. That 8 out of 5 weeks does not, and there was a vacation in there, to be fair. But it feels like that doesn't seem very accurate because these are not new buses. Yeah. So, I mean, I even went through step by step to see how many breakdowns there were for certain buses. I mean, clearly, I could look at, they call them wagons. A regular bus is called a wagon. Number 20, number 18, number 4 and 5 have had many, many mechanical issues. 10, 9, another one, 9. That's a lot of mechanical issues. And compared to last year, I have to tell you, there have been fewer. There have been fewer breakdowns.
They're all 3 years newer.
They're 3 years newer. So
yeah.
you've come in a good direction. I'm just saying, where's all that information?
So let me kind of address that. So last year, obviously, as our fleet ages, and as fleet ages, they have more breakdowns. So that's, as you saw, as the end of the year, you probably did see more breakdowns. Our fleet is 3 years newer here. The reason you see more, and typically if I have a newer fleet, I do see more at the start of the school year. The buses have been, they're not utilized as much over the summer. So the buses tend to sit a little bit more, so we do run into issues. Now the other issue, so anything that a driver, so our drivers every morning as part of their requirement do a pre-trip. They review the bus and try to prevent any issues that may occur, or identify any issues that might occur prior to. That is part of our requirements, part of the state requirement. So they go through and do that. So especially when drivers are utilizing new buses, and that's what happened this year in Westborough, right? They're not familiar with these buses, so something might feel a little bit different. That is where we see a big increase, and that's pretty. They're like, oh, something doesn't feel right. So we want to make sure anything that we're going to go in and check it at the shop. We don't typically see as much throughout the year, except if it's an aging fleet, then we do see that a little bit more towards the end of the year. We went back, and I know you had that concern, we went back and kind of reviewed, was there any missing information? We really couldn't identify anything that was missing, as far as...
last year, there was no week where you didn't have a mechanical issue. This year, there's like 2 weeks of none.
So can I ask, and just because you had a chance to review the report, if you look at trend over the school year, right, you're looking month by month or week by week, and certain buses may have more mechanical issues, but you said there's a lot more preventative maintenance in the last few weeks or whatever it is.
All
preventive.
Right.
So, and if I'm putting words in your mouth, please tell me I'm wrong here. You're kind of implying that in the beginning of the year, before they know the buses, everything is listed as an issue. But as you get further towards the end of the year, those drivers who are more experienced with those buses will actually check on things ahead of time, which would be tagged as a preventative maintenance rather than an actual issue.
Yeah, they know the bus is a little bit...
So based on that number, and Lisa, I don't know if you had a chance to do that, if you went back and said, okay, week over week for bus number, or wagon 22 or wagon number 4, I used to see about 10 issues, both preventative and new issue issue. I still see that. Maybe I'm seeing a shift to preventative.
Well, actually, I had a chance to play with that spreadsheet this afternoon, and one of the things that I did was, since it's listed by date, and the events that happened on that date, and then a list of buses that go along with it, by serial number or some coding anyway. I queried on how many buses of the same serial number, how many had problems. Versus, let's say one had a problem and it didn't reoccur. So irrespective of the problem, I would say if a bus had 10 issues, all right, it's time to look at that bus and do something about that bus than it is to worry about, whether it was a light, whether it was something else, because there are things in this world called lemons. And if you have a bus that's continually having problems, whatever they are, I'm going to call it a lemon. And it's time to give it to some other district and give us one that works.
Or retire. Let's retire rather than giving somebody else the pain.
Well, the thing is, business is business, but the point is, there is a way to find out whether or not you got a lemon and do something about it. And that's one of the ways you can do it, is to query by serial number of the bus and how many events it has, which somebody does, I'm sure, in your shop.
Our maintenance team does review that.
And the thing is, there may be 3 or 4 buses in that list that I would say, have events that could either be issues associated with the driver, but as you said, that trend line goes away as they become experienced with it. But the thing is, if it's recurring, the same bus all the time, doing this, doing that, something else, it's probably seen its day and it should be removed from the fleet and replaced with something else. Because the bottom line simply is, it costs you money to have somebody else step in, a second driver driving a second bus to deliver the service.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make sense to me. What makes sense to me is to make sure that bus that is defective in a list of things and always reoccurring isn't on the routes anymore, but somewhere else.
That's an interesting way to put it, because in my mind, in running the business, right, it's almost more cost effective for me to replace that with a different bus if I'm constantly having to have somebody else investigate. I'm spending money on mechanics, I'm doing checks, I'm doing all those things. Now, I realize from a contract perspective, we are in a contract that allows buses to be 10 years old.
Right.
I realize that that's part of the negotiation. That may be a conversation that we need to have as a committee, that if we are concerned at the number of issues that happen on a bus that is typically 7+ years old, then we need to have that conversation at contract renewal time. I will say that 2 of the cars that are in my house are over 7 years old, and I do not do maintenance checks or problems or find problems on them every week. So, I realize that they run a lot more miles than these buses, I know, because unfortunately my wife and I both commute into Cambridge and Woburn. I'm trying to understand, and it may be something that we need to take back from you, but I think you need to understand this from our perspective. And Stephen's point is probably the most salient point there. Your business may be spending more money giving us older buses than if you actually found or got rid of some of these buses that seem to have been identified of problems. That's something for you to look at.
Yep.
We need to look at what we're going to accept on a regular basis for maintenance.
Yeah, and I would say, to the extent that we get to play with whatever the new contract's going to be, there will be some other metrics that will help us get rid of the buses that don't perform, however old they are.
Yeah.
I've got a truck that's got 240,000 miles on it and it runs fine. And in fact, you could probably have buses, I'm sure in the Midwest, where they run them until they don't run. It's a different story, and there's a good one and a bad one. So I would suggest that you look at some of these other metrics that you can use to determine, quote unquote, the ones that you really don't want in your fleet. And
it's a reasonable business approach, and it's
All right, I think Lisa has a couple more.
I do, although,
newer
speaking
points.
of those, 4, 5, 18, and 20 are your 4 that have had the most mechanical problems of all the ones I looked at. They had quite a few. So another issue in our contract is that we're supposed to have at least 2 spare buses and 2 buses for athletic and field trips. So my question really is, are we really getting the reports back when there is a breakdown or late for field trips and athletics? Because clearly, pretty disconcerting was to find my daughter on a bus texting me on the side of the road of a highway and not getting reported back on the mechanical issues that this bus was even out there, because I'm being told that it's an outside bus. Also being told that she heard the driver say that he had smelled fumes for 15 minutes and yet would not have been on a highway if he had stopped before he smelled fumes. So I have to wonder about the training of outside drivers that you're bringing on And it's just one of those concerns that even I went on a field trip last week. The teacher next to me said she had a breakdown on the highway last year on a field trip. And I thought, another breakdown on a field trip. That was not in the mechanical report last year. I would have seen that. So I'm asking you, I'm looking for, what is the protocol, not for what happens when there's, pulled over on the side of the road. Why are they even on the highway? They knew there were problems before they got there. So that means that the training for those drivers tells me that something was amiss before they got there.
So I just want to clarify, one of the things that we did clarify in process was that regardless of where the bus is contracted from, if it's with the company, we clarified this, that if it's transporting Westborough students, I consider it a Westborough bus and it will be on the mechanical report. So I think when they have buses coming in, so they weren't recording the ones on the report that aren't our buses, but if they're doing runs for us, I consider them one of our buses. So they'll add that to the report. So
And that breakdown that was on the highway was added to it. You just didn't get the
the
next piece.
It has been added to it.
And I think to that point, I mean, one of the things we've talked about in our standing relationship, and I want to make sure you have an opportunity to ask your other questions, is you don't want our parents to continue to feel confident that you're working hard to improve the pieces that we've asked, that our buses run very well on the majority of days, and that our kids get on and off happy. And I just think we have to keep a balance of that as we look at.
There's a lot of routes that happen. It's 132
There's a lot of good going on,
per day.
and our desire to push on areas where we want improvement. I think in the scope, it's just also important to articulate the other pieces that have gone well for us, so that they're balanced. But back to you.
And the last one is really about the deep clean. Again, it's in the contract. We've really only had one since we've had the contract. We've had one cleaning and one when the Hastings epidemic, the health scare was happening. And so my concern is the contract's been in existence for a couple of years. We haven't had the cleanings in any of those other periods of time. And in the future, hiring the outside contractor to clean, but not necessarily December and February, because they don't do that during the cold. I guess I'm asking, there's no penalty right now for if you don't do those, except for that you're violating the contract, which is, a bigger concern. So we had drivers come to us and say it's never been done, that this is the first time that's found clean buses. So for those who are listening, we had our buses cleaned on the inside and outside during April vacation. It's supposed to happen during every vacation and summer.
So just to talk to that, over the summer, we did have the buses cleaned. We also had them cleaned over April vacation. This is the first time we internally did it the first time, over the summer before the school year started. Every time we do a preventive maintenance 4 times a year, the exterior is cleaned. And I know the bigger concern comes from the interior. So there were opportunities this year of the December and February vacations around cleaning the buses, and we're working to find some solution because the temperature has come into comes into effect.
We're discussing it. I mean, we have to discuss what is an appropriate quality clean in the middle of winter in terms of, when they did deep clean those buses, they were wet. I mean, they definitely, so there's a process piece. I don't think this is like necessarily school committee live time discussion that we have to use that depth of discussion on it, but we can certainly say it as a part of the report. It's on the list for us to continue to review. I think Irene's continuing to meet regularly to make sure that the items you guys have noted are going to be on our radar, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, one of the points, I think, in a contract is it's a mutual agreement between parties. And there shouldn't have to be a penalty to force people to do what the contract says. I think the first step, in my own opinion, always is to get a handle on what this issue is, what your problems are in terms of not being able to deliver what's requested. Second, for us, is to know when that's supposed to happen. So my first request is that you send us a letter with the schedules of when you're going to do this, i.e. to meet the terms of the contract. The second thing is, given the time of year that those things are supposed to happen, you tell us where you're going to take the bus to do it. If it's in the middle of winter and it's 20 below zero, obviously you're not going to do an internal cleaning of the bus unless it's inside somewhere. So it seems to me common sense says, if you give us a date in February where you're going to clean the bus internally, you're going to tell us where it's going to be.
because that's the only way you're going to solve this problem. Otherwise, we're going to be saying the same damn thing next time you come in as to why you didn't do what the contract says. So I think good faith says to me that you're going to send us a letter that tells us where you're going to do it and when you're going to do it and who's going to do it, so that somebody from this committee or somebody we appoint is going to go inspect and see that you did do it. It's silly to argue about the same damn thing and not fix it. And if you're not doing it, and you've admitted tonight that you're not doing what the contract says, quote, but you're trying, and after 2 years, trying doesn't make it for me, tell us how you're going to do it so that we can monitor it, that you performed what you're supposed to do under the contract. Because the penalty in the long run is, do you get the job next time? If you didn't do what we asked you to do this time, maybe we wouldn't consider you next time. And if you like doing this business and working with us, then we would hope you'd want to come back and bid it again. And I understand the nature of the way school bus contracts work, not only in Massachusetts, but in the rest of the country. It still doesn't mean that you can get away with doing something that's not in your, doing something contrary to what's in your contract. That just doesn't make sense to me. So please solve this problem and deliver to us the way you're going to do it, so it's something that we can track and guarantee that you did do it. Because I've listened to this now 3 times and it hasn't been fixed. It's time to fix it.
So I think that one of the things that's really helpful about a set of reports that come forward is it gives us an annual set of minutes in the school committee record. So I hear a couple of action items I just want to summarize for us. So one will be that we can have first student submit the planned schedule of dates, location, and plan for the cleanings as per contract. And 2, that we add clarity around the maintenance log, adding a column there, which you've already articulated. I think that's a good plan. And that all buses that are transporting our students are considered Westborough buses. So that's 2 clear action items. And then I think the other is we'll have Irene just looking at the arc of how many buses, age-wise, trajectory-wise, where we are, and make sure that we have a bell curve of age, and that we're tracking when those other buses will rotate out if they are giving us maintenance problems. All right.
Thank you.
Did anybody hear anything else that you want on the action list? Does that summarize what you think we've covered?
Yeah, yeah.
I think the report was more Westborough centered, so I want to thank you for that. I think it had Westborough data. We asked for Westborough data. We got Westborough data.
I appreciate that.
And while there's aspects of the contract implementation that feel contentious, I feel like those hard conversations have been moving us forward. And I commend this whole team for that process. So thank you.
Do you have to work through the conversation?
Yep, we definitely have to push through the tough spots. And I know Cindy's taking very good notes, and that we'll be able to work with her to debrief on areas where we have other questions.
And we have regular meetings, we're working meetings, and we bring up these issues as well, and partner to come up with solutions. So that will continue.
Yeah, I just want to, Kristen, did you have anything? No. Okay. I just want to say, we do appreciate your transparency, and I think, like Irene said, the regular meetings and the relationship building has been great to get all this, start to get it solved. Safety is obviously our primary concern. We still get high praise for your drivers. Everyone, great relationships with the kids, with the parents. Yeah, so we, definitely want to mention that. They are your saving grace there. No, they're great. So we really appreciate them and all their work with our kids. I think we're just looking for a smooth implementation in the fall.
Yep.
And I want to make sure we have a commendation there in the record for Kathy, who I think really improved. That's the person on call at the site for first student, who really stepped up in her communications this year, written to us. So I'm much happier about that. So thank
timely.
you. Yep, timely and clear. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for your
Thank you.
Thank you
for coming. Yes.
All right, so I think we're going to look at our student handbooks from each level. I guess it is. It needs a couple adjustments.
You want to point for this one, or
We have to do the new timing.
I can do it.
Just to ask for a motion.
So the only thing that is changing are school committee policies that you have already talked about and approved, and they've been inserted into the handbooks. And so when I put them up here for you to be able to look at. If you wanted to, there's red lines in all of them. I mean, some of the red lines are just dates, but the only substantive pieces that are there are different school committee policies that have been updated. So even though it says Armstrong on the cover of this one, it's all K3s are embedded in this one document. So I don't know that there's much substantive discussion to have other than just noting the fact that, these are policies they've already approved.
We can either do a motion to approve it, or we can discuss it.
I think we need to do a motion to approve it before we discuss
Yeah, we
it.
can have a discussion.
Do we want to do a motion as the whole group, or do you want to do it one by one?
I would do the whole
I
group
do the
because I
whole
think
group.
the changes
So,
are very small.
Do they want specific changes, or do they just send them in? They didn't need that.
So let me do this. I'll make a motion to approve the updated student handbooks for all of the schools, the high school, Gibbons Middle School, the elementary schools, and Mill Pond. Obviously, the 3 elementary schools are grouped into one document.
Yep.
As updated with the red lines that we have available for public consumption whenever they would like.
Second.
Oh, consumption and emotion, wow. Second?
Seconded.
Okay, all in favor? Are we not, sorry, discussion?
So,
Just trying to go quick.
my first discussion actually, and
David's
it's one that I had on Gibbons, and it's just a clarification.
Yeah.
I think most of the ones that I read through when I was reading the red lines were policy changes, but in the applied group classes leveling placement waivers, we've added MCAS scores as one of the criteria for placement, which I don't think was a policy one. I just caught that as I was reading through that that's a new thing, and I wanted to make sure we caught that because that wasn't a part of a policy. I don't know that it's bad. I'm not opposed to it. I just want us clearly seeing the fact that it's in there. So it's on, page I'm not going to be able to do, but it's when you get to the applied group classes, leveling placement and waivers section of the Gibbons one.
Okay.
Having
So
kids in 3 of them, I read
I don't
them
think
all.
there's any change. It was just clarifying. I'm just doing a quick search here on MCAS, so I don't know if I spell it right.
Yeah, while you're looking, I can, so I know that in what we did, you remember, all last year, Daniel was working with the high school and the middle school as we developed, you heard this through those math, as we broke up what was feeling like a track and provided better on-ramping and better use of testing, summer testing and other opportunities for students to basically onboard. MCAS has always been a part of what we look at, and it ends up being kind of a base way of.
Just a clarification, so
Yeah.
officially that we're doing
Yep.
it, that's all.
Yep.
And like I said, I don't have an issue with it.
Yep.
Right.
I just want to make sure we call it
Yeah.
out, because it's
Yeah.
not one of the policies we've discussed in past
Yeah,
things.
definitely.
Chris, did you have any?
Yeah, and I also noticed that we're going to be adding in the calendar, like the new calendar with those dates according
Yes.
to holidays and things, so
Yes.
that'll be added in. Okay, so make sure that's in there.
In the high school one, the restricted areas for lunch periods, it says it's outdoor picnic area and just the cafeteria. I thought that policy had changed. There's like a couple other areas.
I think that they left it right to control
Okay.
and direct if needed. I mean, I
Yep.
think that they've created a lot of flexible spaces. They've got the library in there.
Right.
We'll have Daniel clarify with Brian how much further he wants to broaden it.
And since people have asked this, it's about the phone, electronic devices before a certain time, and it still says 7:30 on it instead of 8:05. So
Yeah, there's like other times,
There's
I noticed.
times.
Yeah,
that
the
need to be
the times
adjusted.
that are
Yeah, they
specific
need
to
to
that
be
need to
There's
be
times
adjusted.
other than
Adjustment.
just the main times.
Yeah.
Like I know, sorry to interrupt you, the
That's okay.
times for the delayed openings.
Yeah,
It still said like 2 hours from 7:30, whatever.
thank you.
And then under threats of violence, is there an anonymous tip line?
There is, although somebody said to me that they couldn't locate it on the high school. So Daniel, I know, had followed up with John Green to make sure that we have it on the website moving forward.
Okay, I just was reviewing.
No,
the
no, I
handbook.
appreciate it. There's supposed to be as part of the original, it goes back to the original anti-bullying law.
Oh.
And at that time, they made it mandatory for all districts to have
A
an
tip line.
anonymous online tip for bullying and any other choice communications that people wanted to provide, and it's anonymous, and you can log on to any of the schools and do that. So wondered when we did one of our updates if somehow it became more obscure, so Daniel's going to work on that we've already talked about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I just noticed that I think we chose to write Freiburg Parkway as the address on some, but then it still says Forbes
All right,
Street on the other. It's not.
we can look at that.
I figured by the time you change it to Freiburg.
It is kind of confusing. Our mailing address has never changed. It's
Right.
just
Yeah, no,
where
yeah.
you geographically
Yeah.
go to. I mean, because they just
Yeah, I
forward the
thought it was
mail.
only where they changed the where to go versus the mailing when I was reading
Yeah,
through it. I
yeah,
think they
because
did
Oh,
that.
the
right. Okay,
mailing
maybe
is,
that's it. Yeah,
yes,
yeah, okay.
the
That makes
mailing is
sense.
supposed to
Yeah,
stay
I don't know.
original, because that's where
Yeah.
it goes, and then they bring it over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I found them all in general to be very consistent with the wording, but inconsistent with the, where things are. And where, I mean, I'm sure things are just added as they are. It doesn't need to be.
Right.
No, it's really
necessarily,
helpful.
but
That's
it's
why
like-
we do it. I mean, as a
Yeah.
team, it gives
When you look
us.
through them in a row, you're like, oh, that wasn't in the same spot
Mhm.
as this one. Not,
It's one of the things, you know, in terms of over the years, there's, each school does it on their own, and so when they're sitting there doing the editing, they do it in a style that is their own, and then we have, over the last few years, tried to pull that back and centralize it a bit, especially as the policy piece, and with our new HR director, that is going to be
There
a
you go.
major push on her part, is to make sure all the policies are sort of consistently in the
Graded.
same area, and, you know, that it looks, there's more uniformity to
Good
it.
use of live links and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So I think that'll be good.
Actually, that brings up a question I have, which is, what form is this provided in the schools, and is it also on the website?
It is, it's all electronic at this point.
It's all
Okay,
electronic.
so now my question is, with what I got as a document to review, which was a PDF, it was not searchable. Okay, and so I would ask that however you prepare it, that it's searchable. For example, with a table of contents that tells you what page it's on, the subject matter you're looking for.
Right.
Okay, if I can't search on that, then I have to
Yep, I
sort through
agree.
it page by page.
Yeah.
So if it's a PDF on a website, please make it searchable so you can find what you're looking for.
Okay.
great, good feedback. Yeah, really.
There was a link on the high school handbook for the fee schedule. It actually doesn't go to the link doesn't go to the fee schedule. It goes to the athletic page. But
On the
there's-
draft that you were looking at?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes, exactly.
It goes to the athletic mission,
But not
not to the actual sub-site that is the fee schedule.
exactly.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't know if that's good or bad, though.
But the other handbook goes,
It
has
goes
it
right to
fully
it.
listed
Yeah.
in the handbook.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does have the specific, but
Okay.
it's, it could be a little clearer, or you could say, here's the general page, the fee schedule is included. Like, there could be a little cleanup there.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're constantly tweaking these. I think the changes you've made are good. I think they reflect the right things. There's always more we can keep editing as we
Yeah, all the
go.
content's there. I just found it to be a little not,
Cleaning up.
Yeah.
It's only confusing to us because we're looking at all of them. If you're a
right
parent
in
in
a
that
row. Yeah,
school,
that's true.
Well,
you don't care as long
Well,
as.
some
it's-
parents look at all.
yeah, I'm
4,
looking at
5
these
handbooks.
three.
I got 4.
You got all 4.
4 next
All right,
year.
I
Yeah.
take it back.
Exactly.
Oh my God,
Yes.
that's funny. That's why Nicole put it on her list, because she had to do it.
Yes.
She-
Very
no,
familiar with them.
probably, she only has 3 though, 'cause she's got twins. So.
That's right.
I have 4.
Double
That's good. Anyway, all right, so we can vote to
Vote to accept the changes. we
accept the
have.
changes.
Yeah, with the recommendations made.
Inclusive of the minutes recommendations. yeah.
Yep.
Okay, all in favor? Great, thank you. Thanks
Thank you.
Thanks for your work on that, Daniel, pulling that together for us. All right, now we're moving on to our annual very public review of our superintendent. It is based on her 3 goals that she sets for herself and the 4 standards, which are the goals. Her goals were her long-range strategic plan implementation, communication, and building projects. And then the 4 standards are instructional leadership, family and community engagement, management and operations, and professional culture. So we each individually reviewed, and I have compiled the results. I'm using the John Green method of the graph. Your reviews were favorable, being that, yes, consistently favorable, being that proficient and exemplary were the results. So there was no Nothing less than that. So it's a favorable review overall. And
That's a kind way to give me like a
you were
summative.
found-
That's
yeah,
very
that was what John
helpful.
Green was doing. He was putting the two categories together to make it all favorable. So, and overall, we found you to be exemplary. So I will pass this over to you. That is the compilation. I can also share you into the
document.
Into the
Thank you very
document,
much.
yes.
Thank
as
you.
well. But I would open up to the committee if they want to make any comments.
Well, I have to comment, I think, and if anyone else wants to speak first, that's fine.
No, please,
Okay.
no.
One of the things that you've noticed is that I'm very busy with many of these things, and as a result of that, Amber and I spend a lot of time in each other's presence as we're doing the business of the district. As a result of that, I think you see, at least I see, at depth, the level of effort that she puts into being the superintendent of schools in this district. And not only that, but the acceptance of her leadership across the district with all the people that she works with, to the point where, you know, that competency is expanded to dealing with other officials in the town, including the town manager, board of selectmen, fire chief, fire department, the police chief, police department, and all the players that in fact are a part of this town. And I don't think I've ever seen anybody who has the capability, I guess the patience, the competence, and the ability to maintain the level of excitement that is absolutely necessary to perform the job that she does. And so it was as I went through the review, there was no way I could do anything other than exemplary, or the other title, which I think there was a different title, but represented the same answer. And I think we, as members of the school committee, are very lucky to have found a person who is as excited today as she was on the day that she came to work for us, to have provided, I think, the district and the parents of this town the level of effort to make this as good a district as we can with the constraints that we have. And so therefore, I'm assuming you can guess what my ranking of your performance was in this issue. And it's exciting, I think, certainly doing this effort, if you will, to rank somebody is never an easy thing. But I found it exciting to be able to do that and have the confidence to know that that was the right number or the right answer to the question for your performance for this district. And so I want to thank you for being here, and it really is a pleasure to work with you and with the rest of the team that you've assembled in all forms, in all ways that we deal with each other. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Anyone else want to jump right in?
So now that I've been here a year, I found this a much more pleasurable process because I felt like I've come to know you. It really is. I hadn't worked with it very long, and yet was already impressed at that point. But I mean, I think the part that I sometimes wonder whether people in the town really see is, Amber, your long-term vision and, you know, striving to be the best at, you know, education is really impressive. And to watch you go through that strategic plan step by step and ensuring that it's moving forward on a regular basis, and to be so committed to your leadership team and to your staff, the staff, and to the kids of this town has been really extraordinary to watch. And I've seen so many other aspects where you have just kept improving. Like the amount of communication with our town has been really leaps forward, where I never thought we were really limited, but to see a step forward, you know, shows your commitment to connecting with the community and connecting with parents and getting the information out there so that you're not, you know, alone. So it's been really a pleasure to work with you and get to know you better, and you know, it's been extraordinary. So also exemplary.
Yeah, and if I can jump on, because I think that's where a lot of my focus came to this year. I've had the luxury of this being my third review now, because of the half year that I had come in here, and that in the very beginning, I looked very critically at all of the possibilities of things that you wanted to do, and I almost looked at the way you were thinking of yourself and where you wanted to take this and where you wanted to go. And that first review, I said, oh, well, she's right. She'd like to do more. She'd like to continue more. She'd like to build more. She'd like to do the next level. And I think Lisa really hit it on the head, where we get to a point of going, this is good, and then you, because you are driven to truly perform at a level that's better, we find it gets better. And that individual drive to improve year over year, regardless of how good you did it last time, is what is making Westborough the place that it is right now. And it's seen in your activities, but it's really seen in some of these 5-year strategic plans. Your 5-year strategic plan, the first time I saw it, what you have already accomplished and where you continue to push yourself to find ways to make us better is incredibly exciting. And I know as a community member, you have to balance that with what it's costing our town and how we make that efficient and intelligent use of the money, the resources, and what we're trying to accomplish. And somehow you have been able to do that without, like many other towns, driving them into the ground of just overspending on it. And, you know, I know that we go to town floor a lot, and we see a lot of times when people are like, geez, you're going to spend more money. Where you are doing amazing amounts with what you're getting, and I thank you for that as a town member. I thank you for that as a parent, and I truly thank you for that as a committee member. Seeing that leadership and that drive really makes me proud to have you on the team.
And it's hard to believe that I've only been working with you for a few months. Since my first day on the job, you've been so warm and inclusive and welcoming and so willing to get me up to speed on things that these guys have years of experience knowing. And so I appreciate the time that you've spent to help me understand my role here. One thing I've noticed about you is you are always eager to celebrate success. And in this role, we often hear the bad news or the what's going wrong or what needs to be improved. And I love that you help us take a step back to always celebrate the success around us, the good things that are happening. And I really appreciate that in you. I had opportunity to spend some time with you at the high school, and I watched you interact with many of our high school students. And a thing I noticed is you exhibited a lot of ease in the classrooms, you showed genuine work in the students, you sat right down with them, asked them thoughtful questions, you were really carefully listening to their answers and interacting with them. And that's the heart of the work that you do. It's your drive and skill at creating and maintaining those positive relationships that helps you be successful, it helps everyone around you be successful. And I feel like your passion for this job comes through every day, and you are truly a gift to our community. Thank you.
Nice. Thanks.
My turn? I find I'm exhausted watching you. Watching you do your job is exhausting for me. So just know that.
But when you get into the chair seat, you get a little close. It's
exhausting.
It's fun.
Not because of what I'm doing, because of what you're doing. Our town and schools are lucky to have such a competent leader. You know, an area for growth, the faculty really expressed on their surveys that they wanted you to get back into the schools and see them in action. And I think that's a good thing, that they're asking for your time. Yeah, they want you around, so that's kind of odd, right? But I think they, value your input. And also resounding on the surveys too were the comments that people just felt about our sense of community here, and I think that starts at the top. So, thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Now, don't let any of this go to your head.
Oh, I know. It's so funny because I'm organizing my thinking. It's always such a strange process to do such a public review, and I find it very awkward to take positive feedback. I love this job. I love the work. I love seeing that next set of opportunities. I think that the work the team has gotten done in the last 4 years is amazing. I mean, amazing. It's so much fun to work with such an energized group, and I just have to say that any superintendent who is able to be successful has a really strong school committee and a really strong team. And so for me, my job is just pushing the pieces around. And I really value the fact that we have an incredibly strong subcommittee network. And that one of the things I really like is that I have relationships with each of you around important projects. You know, that we have authentic opportunities. And you think about like the times when I have opportunities to call and work with each of you. I do spend the most time with Steve because we're sharing so much around the building projects. And I do find it really energizing to be able to spend time because we get inspired by ideas. And that is part of what you have to do, is stay in that zone. And that's a role of a superintendent, is to have those next ideas and to be looking down the road. And I think we're trying to do that. I'm trying to look down the road while we're also really doing just such good work to accomplish what we've put on our list. So I appreciate that people see my passion for this work and for being in the community, and I appreciate that you see that, and I feel like that's something I can own because I do really care about this work, and I do love the opportunity to be with kids and teachers. We laugh every day, even though we really also struggle with so much to get done. But I do think that for 2 years in a row, I started my little goals list over here while you were talking. You know, for me, you know, the areas where I really want to work on looking towards those classroom visits. It's really been hard for me to be in classrooms this year, and I think I didn't communicate explicitly enough out into the field with my teachers that I wasn't going to be there as much. Like I didn't do what I needed to do, which was to say to them, I can't be in classrooms this year. You know, and I think it was hard for me to relinquish that, and I was in them a lot less. And I think for me to see that 2 years in a row, that echoing, means that looks like it could be a pattern if I don't recommit to that. So it's something that I'm going to have Daniel really help me hold to, and I'll work with the leadership team on that to push me on making sure we do that. Because that is where you get the relationships and the information that feeds the curriculum and the things we need. And then, you know, that I called out, you know, my own particular target goals for my personal writing and my timeliness on projects. I'm always at the window of the edge of a written project. And it's just a pattern piece that is hard when people are working with me on things. So those are goals I'm setting for myself. I'm going to keep pushing for those. But I'm thrilled to look at the strategic plan actually and to have gotten three full physical years in, and the amount of work that we've accomplished as a team, all of you, is amazing. We have, by the close of next year, we will have moved the majority of those items to complete. And I'm hoping that we do, because we really have to create some space for new ideas and new things. Hopefully less gigantic than some of the things we took on in the beginning. So for me, it's very exciting to come into the summer and be thinking about what we want to do with the leadership team and the planning we want to do. And truly accomplishing the number of projects that we have to keep eye on this summer will keep us busy. So I will read this. Thank you. It's like pretty thick. It's
Light
making
reading.
me
I know,
nervous.
there's a lot
Yeah,
of
so
commenting.
thank you. And I will really be able to reflect and step back and set new goals. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, I think that's it. We can, I need a motion. They're going to executive session.
I was
hold
like,
on.
which motion do we need? I'll
Hold
make
on,
a
I don't
motion.
have it ready for you.
Make a motion to meet in executive session pursuant to MLG Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Purpose 3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigation, as an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on litigation position of the school committee, and under MLG Chapter 30A, Section 22G2, Purpose 7, to review and approve all executive session minutes. Wow.
Second.
Roll call
That's
vote.
a big one.
Vincent, yes.
Edinburgh, yes?
Dulay, yes.
Crandall, yes.